Hey there, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, we are at the Delaware Contemporary Museum of Art, where we are vibing on everything from plastic to the fantastic in exhibits that challenge traditional norms and break barriers. There's even a reference to a 70s disco song. This show has it all. Stay tuned. The 302 is headed your way. Hey there, we are at the Delaware Contemporary Museum talking about three really cool exhibits. I'm joined now by Chase Doherty, who is the curator of some of these exhibits, to talk a little bit about them. Chase, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me and thank you for being here with us.
Absolutely, we love paying you a visit. Now, the room that we're in now, we're in the DuPont Gallery, and this is More Than a Woman, which is not just a song, apparently.
It is not, yes. So this is a show, a small group show with three artists, and it was inspired by the Bee Gees disco hit, More Than a Woman. And I curated this exhibition after, loving that song, but also thinking about what are the expectations of being a woman. And there's so many things going on right now with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, but also 2021 marked a huge year of 16 anti-LGBTQ plus laws and legislation across the country. And so really wanted to think a lot about what it actually means to be a woman.
So let's talk a little bit about one of the first artists. We are here with it's like a fabric sculpture. Tell me about this artist and what they were thinking when they, what was their inspiration?
Sure. So this is one of our very young artists, Lauren Galban, and she has three sculptures in the show. And each of one, they're all inspired by the female form and the female body, and really taking our bodies and abstracting them and thinking about all of our lumps and our hair and our female anatomy and imagining what that can be within an abstract sculpture.
This one is definitely really colorful, but the one across the room, I'm going to say it because people are going to think it looks like a bunch of boobs.
Yeah, which definitely part of the inspiration, 100%. And something to note about each of the sculptures, for those of you who come to the Delaware Contemporary, is that they're multisensory, so feel free.
So you can touch them.
Yep.
Because a lot of times you go to a museum and you get yourself kicked out. I'm not going to say that happened to me, but you don't want to touch most times. But
yes,
you can do that here.
Yeah, you can do without with these specific sculptures.
So on the wall, they're also, moving on to our second artist, there are a bunch of tapestries. And is that needlepoint?
It is all hand-done embroidery. Yes, so this artist, Orly Kogan, she collects fabrics that are really referring to domesticity. So tablecloths, bedcloths, baby blankets, and she appropriates these fabrics and then does hand embroidery on top of them. And she is really looking at kind of the behavior of women and thinking about these very stereotypical tropes that women get placed in purely based on the functionality of our bodies. And so many of them are self-portraits, but she is appropriating these materials and considering different ways to think about that.
It's really interesting because when you look at some of the tapestry, well, it looks like tapestry from here, but it's actually a canvas. You see Disney characters, like we have Snow White, there's Alice in Wonderland. Talk to me a little bit about, the use of that imagery when we're talking about the traditional roles of women.
Sure. So especially with kind of Disney princesses, Snow White, thinking about who's the hero of that story and how you can be your own hero, but also just weaving in those pop culture moments as reference points for individuals who are looking at the work, viewing the work, and allowing them to, reference these stories that we know so well, but then also seeing another way to consider a female in these kind of direct references.
So our third artist is kind of a collage artist, is that right?
Yes. So our third artist is Johanna Goodman, who is directly behind me. And she is a digital collagist who is pulling images from the internet. She has also done work in analog collage with magazines, but she is specifically looking at female forms and dismantling the idea of fabric and personality and roles similar to Orly Kogan, but in a very different way.
It's really powerful, especially when you look at the piece that you chose for the poster of this exhibit. It's like a Venus kind of blown up, deconstructed. So it's amazing how she's able to take those images and turn them into something so beautiful.
Yes, and her in particular, we talked about this theme of the body is this kind of unruly place, and that the female form has so much functionality, but also so much dysfunctionality, and can have much dysfunctionality. And what does that mean? What is it, to be a woman or to have a biologically sexed female body comes with a lot of baggage, and but also a lot of power. So there's this negotiation.
So the cactus.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I feel like a cactus, but she really brought this together in this. What is she trying to say here?
That's also one that's kind of this unruly body is considering, being prickly and maybe not being in a space that is a happy space, and that you can be prickly, and that's okay too.
Absolutely. And the paper. That's amazing. It's like, is it boxes? Is it newspaper? What's the situation there?
Well, I think just in particular, thinking about materials that a lot of female artists use. So we talked a lot about, especially also with Orly Kogan, this embroidery, a lot of kind of tropic feminine crafts, paper, also sewing. So Johanna is thinking about a lot of these different materials, and that is one of those.
Now, speaking of materials, when we come back, we are going to go to, I would say, what is the most Instagrammable room in the gallery right now. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Deutsch, Director of Collections at Winterthur, and we love talking about art with the 302.
Welcome back. If you think we're going to talk about a 1950s prom, well, you would be mistaken. But we are going to talk about plastic and art. And Chase, tell me a little bit about what's happening here.
Yeah, sure. So we are in one of our small galleries, and we have this amazing installation piece by the artist Federico Iribe. And he is a Colombian artist who's based in Miami. And everything that you see here is plastic that he has collected from the Miami area, but in particular, the ocean.
I mean, it's mind-blowing when you look at all this and you think that this was in our oceans, and he was able to collect enough of it to do this.
Yes. Yeah, so it's really, really fascinating because when you look, kind of further away from it, it's just so beautiful and so overwhelming. But then as you get closer, it becomes overwhelming in a different way. It's, it is an immense amount of plastic, and he's very imaginative with the ways that he's thinking about creating these representations of the ocean with what he's found in the ocean.
A plastic ocean. It's kind of ironic. You know what I mean? Because this is the one thing that, we're talking a lot about microplastics now and trying to recycle and how much does get recycled. But when you look at this, he's got lighters that he's turned into fish. I mean, what is your favorite piece when you look at this?
Well, I will say, actually, I really love what he did with the lighters. I think that there are some 200 lighters in this space. And when I think of plastic, I usually think about, one-use plastics, plastic forks. But then it also, Bic lighters are a one-use plastic that's a very complicated design, and that's really kind of terrifying. So yeah, but I think that just amazing how he uses these kind of plastic, the fluffy pieces, the foam pieces, yes, but also pill bottles. I mean, there's a lot to see in here.
Oh yeah, and you look at the end of a soda pop bottle. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever think to myself, oh, that's a jellyfish. But that's what he's been able to do. His imagination is insane.
Yes, and he's really inspired by the actual colors of the plastic as well. So he's imagining, you know, as he's creating based on what they look like and how he can reimagine them.
Yeah,
So.
and I see that there's detergent bottles as well. Just amazing with those big googly eyes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and so this installation is a smaller segment of what he did for the 2019 Venice Biennale. And at that location, he had over 2,000 square feet. So this is, you know, 700 square feet, not even. And I mean, it was huge. So you can imagine how much time it takes and how tedious it is to collect all of these materials.
and just putting it together in a way that makes sense. You know, there's so much plastic. You know, he has created a coral reef made out of straws. There's gloves and hangers. I mean, I can just imagine, what is his process? I mean, do you know? I know you have had a chance to like visit with him.
Yep, so he is he's an artist who just collects by trade. So the imagining of plastic reef is just kind of one iteration of his overall practice. So he was just telling me about doing an installation that involves Italian ties and the consideration of that industry and what the type of material that goes into something like that, which is silk. And what does that do to the environment? So really, every time he's collecting something in mass, he's thinking about the social justifications of that as it pertains to the environment, but also who has access to what, who is, has the privilege to dump whatever it is that they want. And so there's a lot to unfold there.
So while it's really beautiful and you look at it and you think, oh, it's so cool, I definitely have to take a picture, put it on my Instagram. I mean, you just need to take a step back and get the underlying message that if he's able to make an exhibit out of this, imagine the stuff that is still out there.
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. And I think, going back to him being at the Venice Biennale, it would be even that much more overwhelming.
I can imagine. Imagine, because it's pretty on the walls, but if it's in the ocean, it goes in the fish and it goes into us. And we're just now starting to understand the impact of plastics on our world.
And I think that he really makes, he in these installations is talking about individual consumption and what we can do. But, the other aspect of that is holding these companies accountable and really pushing them. And so that's something that he's a huge advocate for as well.
It's just really, really amazing, all the work that he's put into this. And we mentioned the lighters and everything, but have you got to watch this whole thing go up?
Yes.
What was the most surprising thing about this going up?
Well, so how much of it was prepared, I would say. The wall is made up of these panels that Federico, takes the time to create. And so these panels were brought here, installed, but then, his assistants are just bringing in, these amazing structures. But probably what was most surprising to me was that, just as within an art museum, we're so used to being very careful, very delicate with things. And, even though these are still quite delicate, they're also a material that is pretty durable. And so just kind of they're situating all of these structures. It was really fascinating to watch because they were careful, but there was also just, kind of just shuffling around, and it's plastic, so.
And what has been the reception for folks who have seen this? Are they as blown away as we've been?
Yes, this is definitely our showstopper of the season. It's hard to ignore. Right when you walk in the museum, it's just kind of like a direct eye line in the back. And it's been really great because we've had people comment on, how beautiful it is, but also how devastating it is. And that's really this kind of this is the juxtaposition that he's looking for.
Well, Chase, thank you so much. We're going to go into another gallery when we return.
I'm DJ Fazik with Coastal Cruises, and we love cruising with the 302.
Welcome back. We're in the part of the museum that's going to make your mouth water. I'm talking a little bit about an exhibit called Setting the Table. We are joined now by the curator, Leslie Schaefer, to tell us a little bit about that and what's going on at the museum for the rest of the year. Leslie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for this opportunity to speak about what we have now and then a little bit about what's going on coming up in the next few months.
So when you come in here, I mean, it's going to make you hungry. I mean, it's really beautiful pictures of food and setting the table. Tell me about that.
Sure.
And the inspiration, I guess.
So Setting the Table is an exhibition looking at the work of two female artists, contemporary artists, one living in New York City in Manhattan and the other just outside of New York. So they're from the New York area. One is a contemporary photographer, Beth Galton, whose work here you can see, and the other is a painter and videographer, and her name is Dana Sherwood. And both of them are looking at this idea of how we, as humans, individuals, go about preparing and presenting food for the enjoyment of those intended, right? So we're consciously thinking about who is going to be sitting at the table, what their particular interests might be as far as food goes, what do they like, what do they don't like, and why is the setting of the table so significant in our culture, right? It could be a holiday, it could be a tradition, it could just be I want to make that person feel a little bit better today, or it could just be our everyday pastime. We spend almost an hour every day preparing for how we put things on the table across the U.S. So these two artists were really interesting to me. Beth Galton in particular, in her professional life, she is a food stylist, she works with a food stylist. She's a photographer who works with a food stylist to celebrate the specific characteristics of individual foods. But in her personal work, the work that's over here, she's really looking at ideas behind consumption, about materiality as it comes to play in the food choices that we make, why things have to look so perfect in order for us to maybe purchase them, and allows us to engage a little bit more closely, like, why does my apple have to be perfectly round and perfectly green on this side? Why would it not taste the same or be just as healthy or healthy for our world if I could eat it just a couple of days? Talks about food waste and food loss and those kinds of things. It also talks a lot about the way that we set the table and the things that we've thought about historically. So, silverware and vases and flowers and all of those kinds of things that we add around the food to make it a little bit fancier. What happens if it's not quite as perfect? And allowing us to kind of really contemplate choices that we make with regard to setting the table. Dana Sherwood on this side of the gallery, she's interested in this idea of who we're feeding and how we're putting it together. And so many years ago, almost 15 or so years ago, she started experimenting with presenting tables to our animal friends that live just on the perimeter of civilization, right? Right within the boundaries of our neighborhoods, of our blocks within the city, and what they're consuming and how we can develop a relationship. If I give you this, will you be this to me? And we do that with humans too when we make choices about the food that we put on the table. So she has experimented with fox, raccoons, with deer species. She's gone to Siberia and to other places around the world to try to to create a meal that is appealing and consumable by the animals in which she has put all this effort. One thing that I think she's taught us in her work as she continues to work through this is that lack of control. So no matter how much you like pizza with cheese and I provide you with the best pizza, you may, in the end, it may not change our relationship. You may not even want it that day. You may say, oh, I'm not interested in it. And so it really talks a lot about how one-sided some of these efforts are and about our relationship with those gestures. So it's a very interesting show.
It really is an amazing, I guess, juxtaposition, the two styles here. But there's a lot going on at the museum this year.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what's happening.
This Nourish series will run through the end of May, so May 2023. And in conjunction with all of these themes that I mentioned earlier, we are reaching out to some of the most important collaborators within our region to help our community better understand some of the barriers to success that a lot of our neighbors, families, and friends may be incurring here. So anything from having a stable home, to food inequity, just to accessing healthy food, to accessing diapers and things for your child, to providing those resources. Gun violence is a topic that we've been talking about. And so over the course of the next 4 months, we will host 4 different community-based activities with partners to support some of our neighbors who are looking for some space in the museum and hoping that art will provide that inspiration for just a nice, pleasant day and nourishing of the mind, body, and soul. So food and supplies will be provided. We will also be doing our annual, seasonal palate to palate dinner, where we work with a chef from around the region to look at the art that's in our galleries. They come in, they look at the work, they make a menu based on it, and then we position tables within the galleries in response to their menu and that endeavor. So it's really an artist-chef pairing. This is something we've been doing now for about 3 years, and each season it's always different menu, different chef, different art. So it's really fun, and that is on April 28th.
So we'll have to keep our eyes on the website for all the news and different events. Excellent.
Yes, on June 11, we have our 4th annual West Street Festival, and that is for friends, families, neighbors, everyone to come down to the Riverfront neighborhood. We have it located here inside the museum, also out on our patio and in the neighboring parking adjacent to us. And it's a big event with vendors and activities and art making and performances. And so that is on June 11, and that's pretty much all day. It's a Sunday. And then to follow that, it actually takes place at the same time we open our summer series. And the summer series is going to focus on artists of our region. So within about a 250-mile radius, we have 5 teams of curators. So there's 10 curators involved in the selection this summer, which is unique. And we will present 7 different exhibitions. And so we're really excited about that. There's going to be over 50 artists that will participate in these exhibitions. So a lot of people will have their first opportunity to show here, and for us, the first opportunity to work with them. And that's a pretty exciting upcoming event.
We'll have to come back and check that out.
Yeah.
Leslie, thank you
Yes,
so
of
much
course.
for joining us.
Yes.
And we'll be right back. Are you enjoying the visit to the Delaware Contemporary? Well, if you come down, take a few pictures and tag us, the 302, on Facebook. Now, here's some other events happening in the community. For more information on any of the exhibits at the Delaware Contemporary Museum, all you have to do is visit decontemporary.org. That'll do it for this week's episode of The 302. Make sure you follow us on Facebook for extra web content. Well, we're going to leave you now with a beauty shot of Cool Springs Park. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on The 302.